For 7 years, the greatest actor of his generation vanished from Hollywood, choosing solitude and craftsmanship over stardom, until a family project brought him back from the shadows. This is what Daniel Day-Lewis is doing now, after giving up fame. Peak of fame. When Daniel Day-Lewis walked onto the stage at the 85th Academy Awards in 2013 to accept his third Oscar for Best Actor, he made history that will likely never be repeated. No other performer has ever won 3 Best Actor Academy Awards, and given his incredibly selective approach to choosing roles, it's a record that stands as a testament to pure artistic excellence rather than prolific output. Day-Lewis's journey to this unprecedented achievement began in 1989 with his breakthrough performance as Christy Brown in My Left Foot. Playing the Irish writer and painter who had cerebral palsy, Day-Lewis spent months learning to write and paint with his left foot, refusing to break character even between takes. The performance was so convincing and emotionally powerful that it launched him into the ranks of Hollywood's most respected actors almost overnight. But what truly set Day-Lewis apart wasn't just his talent. It was his approach to acting that bordered on the supernatural. For his role as the ruthless oil baron Daniel Plainview in There Will Be Blood in 2007, he lived in character for the entire filming period, speaking in Plainview's distinctive voice, even when cameras weren't rolling. The performance was so intense and commanding that it earned him his second Oscar and cemented his reputation as perhaps the greatest method actor who ever lived. His third Oscar came for embodying Abraham Lincoln in Steven Spielberg's 2012 biographical drama. Day-Lewis spent a year preparing for the role, reading everything Lincoln ever wrote and studying every known photograph of the 16th president. He spoke in Lincoln's high-pitched Kentucky accent throughout filming, and even had the crew address him as Mr. President. The film became a massive commercial success, earning over $275 million worldwide, while Day-Lewis's portrayal was universally praised as the definitive screen version of Lincoln. What made Day-Lewis's career even more remarkable was his extreme selectivity. Between 1997 and 2017, he appeared in only 6 films, sometimes taking 5-year breaks between projects. This wasn't due to lack of offers. Every major director in Hollywood wanted to work with him. Instead, Day-Lewis would only accept roles that completely consumed his imagination, characters he felt compelled to become, rather than simply portray. Industry colleagues often described working with Day-Lewis as unlike anything they'd experienced. Directors like Martin Scorsese and Paul Thomas Anderson spoke of his total transformation into his characters, while co-stars marveled at his ability to disappear entirely into his roles. By 2017, he had earned 6 Oscar nominations, 3 wins, and universal recognition as the greatest actor of his generation, making his sudden decision to walk away from it all even more shocking to the entertainment world. The breaking point. Something went terribly wrong during the making of Phantom Thread in 2016, and Daniel Day-Lewis knew it almost immediately. What started as another meticulous character study quickly turned into an emotional nightmare that would ultimately end one of the greatest acting careers in cinema history. To prepare for his role as Reynolds Woodcock, a demanding and obsessive fashion designer in 1950s London, Day-Lewis threw himself into the world of haute couture with his usual intensity. He spent months apprenticing under the costume department head at the New York City Ballet, learning to cut fabric and sew with the precision of a master craftsman. He even recreated an entire Balenciaga dress by hand, using his wife Rebecca Miller as his model. Determined to understand every aspect of the fashion world he was about to inhabit. But as filming progressed with director Paul Thomas Anderson, something darker began to emerge. Day-Lewis later revealed that before making the film, he had no idea he was going to stop acting. But the experience of becoming Woodcock triggered something unexpected and deeply troubling. "I do know that Paul and I laughed a lot before we made the movie," Day-Lewis explained in a rare interview, "and then we stopped laughing because we were both overwhelmed by a sense of sadness. That took us by surprise. We didn't realize what we had given birth to. It was hard to live with, and still is." This wasn't the first time Day-Lewis had felt the urge to quit acting after completing a demanding role. Throughout his career, he had spoken about wanting to stop, often feeling emotionally drained after the intense process of inhabiting another person's life so completely. But something about Phantom Thread was different, more final, more devastating to his psyche. The breaking point came when Day-Lewis realized he could no longer find meaning in his work. "I need to believe in the value of what I'm doing," he said. "The work can seem vital, irresistible even. And if an audience believes it, that should be good enough for me. But lately, it isn't." The weight of responsibility he felt as an artist, combined with the emotional toll of his method acting approach, had finally become too much to bear. Day-Lewis described the moment when everything changed. "All my life, I've mouthed off about how I should stop acting. And I don't know why it was different this time. But the impulse to quit took root in me. And that became a compulsion. It was something I had to do." The sadness that had overwhelmed him during filming never lifted, creating a depression so profound that he knew he couldn't continue putting himself through the emotional destruction that his craft demanded. The man who had given everything to his art had finally reached the point where his art was taking everything from him. The Great Escape. In June 2017, Daniel Day-Lewis did something that shocked the entertainment industry and went against every instinct of a notoriously private man. He made his retirement from acting completely public. The brief statement released through his representatives was deliberately final. Daniel Day-Lewis will no longer be working as an actor. He is immensely grateful to all of his collaborators and audiences over the many years. This is a private decision, and neither he nor his representatives will make any further comment on this subject. For someone who had spent decades avoiding the spotlight and rarely giving interviews, this public announcement was completely out of character. But Day-Lewis knew exactly what he was doing. "I knew it was uncharacteristic to put out a statement," he later admitted, "but I did want to draw a line. I didn't want to get sucked back into another project." Having spent his entire career being tempted back to work by compelling scripts and visionary directors, he understood that only a public commitment would protect him from his own artistic curiosity. The strategy was both psychological and practical. By making his retirement public, Day-Lewis created accountability that went beyond personal willpower. He knew that directors like Martin Scorsese, Paul Thomas Anderson, and Steven Spielberg would continue reaching out with irresistible projects, and he needed a barrier stronger than his own resolve to keep him away from the work that had both defined and nearly destroyed him. Day-Lewis then began systematically severing his connections to Hollywood in ways that few people understood at the time. He stopped taking meetings with agents and directors, declined all industry events and award ceremonies, and made it clear to his representatives that no offers should even reach him. When longtime collaborator Jim Sheridan, who had directed him in 3 films, including his Oscar-winning My Left Foot, tried to reach out about potential projects, Day-Lewis remained firm in his decision, telling Sheridan simply that he says he's done. Perhaps most telling of all, Day-Lewis has never watched Phantom Thread, the film that drove him to retirement. "Not wanting to see the film is connected to the decision I've made to stop working as an actor," he explained. "But it's not why the sadness came to stay. That happened during the telling of the story, and I don't really know why." This refusal to watch his final performance represented the ultimate break from his professional identity. If he couldn't bear to see the work that ended his career, he certainly couldn't be tempted to create more of it. By early 2018, Day-Lewis had completed his escape from Hollywood entirely. He had turned down every offer, avoided every industry gathering, and created a wall of silence around himself that even the most persistent directors and producers couldn't penetrate, leaving the entertainment world to wonder if they would ever see him again. Where are they now? Deep in the rolling hills of County Wicklow, Ireland, in a place locals call the Garden of Ireland, Daniel Day-Lewis has found something that eluded him throughout his legendary career: complete anonymity. His home sits near the tiny village of Anamoe, a modest Georgian house that can only be reached by a narrow, winding track that keeps unwanted visitors at bay and allows one of the world's most famous actors to live like any other rural Irish resident. Day-Lewis first moved to this secluded corner of Ireland in the early 2000s, not long after winning his first Oscar, when most actors would have been setting up permanent residence in Hollywood. Instead, he chose a place where postcard-perfect villages dot the landscape, where gorse-covered hills stretch as far as the eye can see, and where early medieval ruins remind visitors that this land has been a refuge for centuries. The area is famous for its natural beauty, including the nearby monastic settlement of Glendalough. But for Day-Lewis, its greatest attraction is the peace it offers. For the past 19 years, Day-Lewis has shared this retreat with his wife, Rebecca Miller, the accomplished writer and director, who is also the daughter of legendary playwright Arthur Miller, and their two sons, Ronan and Cashel. The family has created a life that revolves around simple pleasures and normal routines, dropping children off at local schools, shopping in village stores, and participating in community events without the constant scrutiny that would follow them anywhere else in the world. What makes Day-Lewis's Irish life so remarkable is how completely he has integrated into the local community while maintaining his privacy. Neighbors describe him as friendly but reserved, someone who can be seen cycling alone through the mountains for hours at a time or working with his hands in his workshop. His house is accessible only via that narrow track, which serves as a natural barrier against photographers and curious fans, allowing him to move freely in his adopted homeland. The local community has embraced Day-Lewis not as a celebrity, but as a genuine neighbor and contributor. He has become patron of the Wicklow Hospice Foundation and was honored in 2009 as the first person ever to receive the Freedom of County Wicklow. In his acceptance speech, he explained his deep connection to the place. "This is the place that sustains me. This is where I have planted myself. It is a refuge where I restore myself." Day-Lewis has often said that he chose Wicklow because he can go quietly about my business there, and indeed, he has managed to create a life where one of the most recognizable faces in cinema can walk through his local village, attend community events, and raise his children without the constant attention that would make normal life impossible anywhere else in the world. New life, new purpose. In his workshop in County Wicklow, Daniel Day-Lewis has found a different kind of performance, one that creates tangible beauty rather than emotional turmoil. Where once he transformed himself into fictional characters with devastating psychological intensity, he now transforms raw materials into handcrafted objects with his own hands, finding peace in the ancient rhythms of woodworking and shoemaking that have sustained craftsmen for centuries. Day-Lewis's passion for hands-on craftsmanship actually predates his acting career by decades. As a teenager at boarding school, he fell in love with woodworking, learning to create posts and beams, benches and chairs in the traditional arts and crafts style. Even then, he was torn between two paths. He had applied for a 5-year apprenticeship as a cabinet maker before drama school drew him toward acting. "Yeah, I'm handy," he once said, with characteristic understatement. "You give me a tool belt, I know what to do with it." During his first retirement from acting in the late 1990s, Day-Lewis pursued his craft interests with the same intensity he brought to his roles. He moved to Florence, Italy, where he spent nearly a year apprenticing under Stefano Bemer, a legendary master craftsman whose handmade shoes started at $500 and were considered works of art. Day-Lewis learned every aspect of traditional shoemaking: cutting, shaping, gluing, nailing, and fitting, working alongside Beamer in his workshop and discovering the meditative qualities of creating something beautiful and functional with his own hands. The partnership between Day-Lewis and Beamer was more than just master and apprentice. It was a meeting of two artists who shared an obsessive dedication to perfection in their respective crafts. Beamer understood that Day-Lewis didn't just play roles, but became his characters completely, while Day-Lewis appreciated that Beamer didn't just make shoes, but brought his ideas to life through leather and thread. If anyone had been fortunate enough to purchase a pair of Beamer's shoes during that period, they might have been walking around in the handiwork of one of the greatest actors of all time. This wasn't preparation for a role or research for a character. This was Day-Lewis following a genuine passion that offered something acting never could: the satisfaction of creating physical objects that would outlast him. Unlike the emotional devastation of method acting, which required him to lose himself completely in other people's lives, craftsmanship allowed him to find himself through the ancient dialogue between hands, tools, and materials. In his current retirement, Day-Lewis continues to spend hours in his workshop, practicing the twin hobbies that have become his primary creative outlets. The same man who once disappeared so completely into his characters that co-workers forgot his real identity, now finds identity and purpose in the simple act of making things that serve a practical purpose while expressing his artistic vision in wood and leather. Personal transformation. The man who once spent months refusing to break character, speaking in Abraham Lincoln's voice, even at home, has undergone a profound transformation in the hills of County Wicklow that goes far deeper than simply changing careers. Daniel Day-Lewis has evolved from someone who lost himself completely in other people's identities to someone who has finally discovered peace in his own skin, trading the psychological torment of method acting for the quiet satisfaction of being a husband, father, and valued community member. For decades, Day-Lewis lived in a state of almost constant emotional upheaval, throwing himself so completely into his characters that the line between Daniel and his roles often disappeared entirely. He would emerge from each performance psychologically drained, having given so much of himself to fictional lives that he struggled to reconnect with his own reality. The intensity that made him the greatest actor of his generation also made him a man who seemed perpetually searching for something he couldn't quite find in the spotlight. In Wicklow, that restless energy has transformed into something much more sustainable and deeply satisfying. "This is the place that sustains me," Day-Lewis has said about his adopted Irish home. "This is where I have planted myself. It is a refuge where I restore myself." The language he uses reveals everything about his transformation, where once he spoke about becoming other people, now he talks about planting himself, finding roots, and restoration rather than destruction. This personal healing has allowed Day-Lewis to become the kind of community member he never could have been while living the nomadic life of a global movie star. As patron of the Wicklow Hospice Foundation, he has quietly supported end-of-life care in his local area, using his influence not for personal gain, but to help his neighbors during their most difficult moments. His involvement with the hospice reflects a man who has learned to value real human connection over the artificial intimacy of movie sets. The transformation is perhaps most visible in his relationship with his family, where his method acting once required him to live separately from his wife Rebecca during filming to maintain his character's emotional state. He now enjoys the simple pleasures of daily family life, school runs, community events, and quiet evenings at home. His sons, Ronan and Cashel, have grown up seeing their father not as a distant celebrity, but as a present, engaged parent who has chosen family over fame. Local residents describe Day-Lewis as someone who has genuinely become one of them. Not a famous person playing at being ordinary, but someone who has found his authentic self in the rhythms of rural Irish life. The man who once couldn't find peace in his own identity has become someone who can sit quietly in his garden, work with his hands in his workshop, and sleep peacefully without the haunting voices of fictional characters echoing in his mind. Rare glimpses. For 7 years, Daniel Day-Lewis has been a ghost in the entertainment world, appearing so rarely in public that each sighting becomes a minor news event among film enthusiasts who continue to hope for his return. His strategy for maintaining privacy has been so effective that spotting the 3-time Oscar winner has become rarer than seeing most endangered species. With only a handful of documented appearances since his retirement announcement in 2017, the most significant of these rare glimpses came in January 2024, when Day-Lewis shocked the entertainment industry by making a surprise appearance at the National Board of Review Awards in New York City. He had come to present his old friend and collaborator, Martin Scorsese, with the Best Director Award for Killers of the Flower Moon, marking his first major public appearance in years. The moment was particularly meaningful because Scorsese had directed Day-Lewis in 2 acclaimed films, Gangs of New York and The Age of Innocence, creating some of cinema's most memorable collaborations. During that rare public moment, Scorsese couldn't resist teasing the possibility of future work together, telling the audience, "We did 2 films together and it's one of the greatest experiences of my life, I must say. Thank you, Daniel. Maybe there's time for one more." The comment sent ripples through the film community, though Day-Lewis himself remained characteristically silent about any potential return to acting at the time. Beyond this notable appearance, Day-Lewis's public sightings have been limited to occasional low-key outings in New York City, where he and Rebecca maintain an apartment in addition to their Irish home. Paparazzi have occasionally captured him during quiet walks with his wife or family visits, but these images are so infrequent that they often make headlines simply for their rarity. The photos typically show a relaxed, casually dressed man who looks nothing like the intense character he portrayed on screen, often appearing more like a regular New Yorker going about his daily business than one of the world's most celebrated actors. What makes Day-Lewis's privacy even more remarkable in today's connected world is his complete absence from social media. While most celebrities use platforms like Instagram and Twitter to control their public image and connect with fans, Day-Lewis has chosen total digital silence. He has no verified accounts, makes no public statements through social media, and allows no behind-the-scenes glimpses into his daily life, creating a level of privacy that seems almost impossible to maintain in the modern entertainment landscape. The few times Day-Lewis has been spotted, he appears genuinely content and at peace, a stark contrast to the tortured intensity he brought to his greatest roles. These rare glimpses suggest a man who has found something in retirement that eluded him during his career, though he remains as mysterious and enigmatic as ever to the outside world. No regrets. In October 2024, Daniel Day-Lewis did something that nobody expected. He announced his return to acting after 7 years of steadfast retirement. But this wasn't a comeback driven by Hollywood offers or financial necessity. Instead, it was the most personal project imaginable, a film called Anemone, directed by his 26-year-old son, Ronan Day-Lewis, with a script the father and son had written together, exploring the intricate relationships between fathers, sons, and brothers. The announcement sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry, but for those who understood Day-Lewis's journey, it made perfect sense. This wasn't about returning to the celebrity machine that had nearly destroyed him. It was about family, creativity, and the kind of meaningful artistic collaboration that had always driven his best work. The film represents everything Day-Lewis values: intimate storytelling, personal connection, and the opportunity to create something beautiful with someone he loves. Ronan Day-Lewis, a talented painter and filmmaker who graduated from Yale with an art degree, had convinced his father to star in his directorial debut, not through Hollywood pressure, but through the simple power of a story they had crafted together. The project focuses on familial bonds, the very relationships that had sustained Day-Lewis through his retirement and given his life new meaning away from the spotlight. For an actor who had always chosen projects based on emotional truth rather than commercial appeal, working with his son represented the purest possible motivation to return to his craft. The decision reveals much about how Day-Lewis views his 7-year absence from acting. Rather than seeing retirement as time lost or a career interrupted, he appears to view it as essential preparation for this moment, a period of healing and growth that has allowed him to approach his craft from a completely different perspective. No longer the tortured method actor who lost himself in characters, he can now participate in filmmaking as a content family man who understands the difference between art and life. Day-Lewis's willingness to return for this specific project also demonstrates his evolving philosophy about fame and creativity. He has proven that stepping away from the spotlight doesn't mean abandoning artistic expression. It means choosing when and how to engage with that expression on your own terms. His retirement allowed him to rediscover what truly matters: family relationships, personal peace, and the satisfaction of creating meaningful work without the pressure of maintaining a public persona. The fact that he's returning not for a major studio production or a celebrated director, but for his son's first feature film, shows a man who has completely reordered his priorities. Fame, awards, and critical acclaim no longer drive his choices. Love, family, and authentic artistic collaboration do. This return isn't about Daniel Day-Lewis, the movie star. It's about Daniel the father, supporting his son's creative vision while contributing his own hard-earned wisdom to a story they've created together.